Grobinstetter, and I am an educator with the University of Illinois Extension, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Autumn Picks Health Series. So this series is a collaboration between the Illinois Extension and the Interdisciplinary Health Sciences Institute at the University of Illinois, and is designed to connect those across state with researchers at the university and provide evidence-based educational programming. We have a few housekeeping items before we begin. I'm going to have Emily launch the poll if she doesn't mind. And this poll is to collect some basic information from our participants. Once you enter the information, feel free to minimize it off of your screen. So Emily, if you wouldn't mind, great. Thank you so much. If you are seeking CEUs or CPDUs, please click on this link, which I'm going to put in the chat just now. And following today's webinar, and you'll be receiving a follow-up email with an evaluation that needs to be filled out to finalize your CEUs or CPDU process. So let me put this link in the chat. Oh, I think Emily already did too, but thank you so much. And for those of you calling in who'd like CEUs or CPDUs, you can go to a web browser and type in go.illinois.edu/credits. And just another quick housekeeping, if you have any questions during the program, please type them in the chat box. And if you're calling in, please hold your questions until the end of the session. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Jonathan Cerna, and Jonathan's going to tell you a little bit about himself. So Jonathan, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Really appreciate your attendance. I think you're going to find this talk really interesting. If you attended my last presentation, you'll see how it dovetails with that presentation, and it dovetails into the series itself. Obviously, it has a specific order because of it. But it's about healthy habits and building a budget-friendly meals. And we're going to obviously talk about tracking your progress. But I'm just going to introduce myself really quickly for those that have not heard about me before. I'm from Panama City, Panama. I was raised there. And I have a background in dietetics. I'm currently a nutritional science student and also a dietetic internship. I'm completing my dietetic internship to be a registered dietitian. In my general area of study right now for my master's and for my undergraduate work has been nutritional neuroscience. And my major interests include cognitive function, how they interact with nutrition, how nutrition, exercise, and cognitive training or mindfulness, how all those modalities interact. And ideally, I would like my PhD thesis dissertation to be focused on mindfulness and meditation. And pertaining to this presentation itself, behavior change. So just some quick information about myself. And I want to start this by asking a quick question for you to interact with me a little bit. It's not really a tricky question, but I just want to know if you think, like, do you have to spend a lot of money in order to eat healthier? So if you could put your answers in the chat box, I'm just going to give it maybe a minute so that you can take your time doing that. But I would like to know if you think you have to spend a lot of money in order to eat healthier. So I'm looking at the, no, it depends, no. Yes, if you buy organic, I like that. Not necessarily. Yes. Okay, so we're getting some no, some yes. That seems to be somewhat mixed. No, I like this. Okay, that's great. Okay, let's leave it there because we're going to talk about this in general. So that's pretty good. So it's a mixed answers. But first, let's just talk about what we're going to talk about in this presentation, because we're going to address the connection between habit formation. As I mentioned in the slide before about me, I'm really interested in the connection between habit formation and any given habit, and that includes obviously building budget-friendly meals. And we're going to also understand key differences in food processing and their implications for health, because this is something that often gets brought up when having to build a budget-friendly meal, like so canned versus frozen versus fresh, these kinds of things. We're also going to address myths surrounding healthy eating, just a few, but they're important in order for us to understand things that could derail us in our journey to, again, be a healthy human being in general. And then we're going to talk about how to use these habitual patterns, how to build them up so that we can build budget-friendly meals. And we're going to use technology to do this. So this is not a perfect order. This is not like we're going to go 1, 2, 3. It's going to be integrated throughout the entirety of the presentation. So let's just start talking about what does habit formation have to do with budgeting. So one of the things that you'll find yourself saying is that you're this person that, you know, you have a family, you yourself are trying to build these new habits. And let's say that your goal is to just, you know, have a healthful, healthier diet. And what happens along the way is that you find these obstacles that impede your progress. So you find your friends might not help you, or I don't know, you find that the grocery store is kind of far, or you find that your budget is limited, or well, we'll talk about that later. But just any given obstacle that you find along the way, and then you solve those problems, you know. But then always you always find this huge roadblocks on your way to your goal, which are going to have to do a lot with behavior change and with the budget that you can use in order to build a healthier diet. So I specifically wanted to start here because if you notice how this gets talked about very regularly, it's sort of like, well, this impedes my progress and it's getting in the way, and I have to just move it apart. And I want to suggest that there is a better way to look at this, because it's not like you eliminate this behavioral component. It's not like you eliminate the need for you to have to use money in a better way. It's better if you think about it more like this is the Venn diagram. These are all the things that I will need to learn how to incorporate, and you won't eliminate them at any point. You will learn how to use them better, and they will literally carry you to your goal. So you will learn how to implement things that impede your progress, that have to do with things that you habitually do to spend money better or worse, things that you do when you're shopping that make you shop and get things that you need, either better or worse, to prepare and to budget. So we're going to be talking about those things specifically, but I want to offer this reframing of the way that this gets talked about, because it totally changes how you address the upcoming supposed roadblocks. So I wanted to start by talking about processing and the change that has been happening across basically centuries, because we know that unprocessed food was our go-to, our only option at the beginning. Like 1.5 million years ago, we were hunter-gatherers, and that's all we could get. And then we started being able to get a higher and higher ability to process our food. So we went through, you know, we started adding cooking and drying and salting and smoking in order to preserve our food. Then 10,000 years ago, we had the agricultural revolution, and then we were able to get more and more and more skills in order to process and preserve our food. 19th century, we got canning of milk. 20th century, we got dehydration, freezing. We got ultra high temperatures, vacuum sealing, etc. And now we're closer to the 21st century, and you can see that, I mean, we have any of the means available to process our food and to preserve it. And this is actually very helpful in many ways. It helps with supply chains and globalizing food availability. We know that there are limitations to how that gets done, and we know that the food doesn't get to everyone. That's a huge limitation of these. But the processing itself, I know it gets often mentioned and talked about as a thing that will be inevitably bad for our health, but as we're going to see, that's not necessarily the case. Another thing that often gets missed with the processing aspect of the equation regarding food is that people think that when you buy things from, for example, a canned, for example, the grocery store, and they are more processed. So they're like massively produced, and they have these things that now make them unhealthy or whatever. But I want to propose that either at home or in the production of agriculture and through the supply chain, you're going to get really similar techniques. So if you're home and you want to, I don't know, you want to harvest, you want to garden, you want to fish, you want to hunt, or you do that through the massive agricultural practices, you're going to get pretty similar techniques at the processing level. So it's not like at home you heat and clean and peel and cool and freeze, and then the massive supply chain and the industrial agriculture side of things, you're going to do something completely different. Like now we use these robots that have this nothing to do with this, what people call the natural process of processing our food, but they actually involve very, very, very similar techniques. And I want to propose that if you were to preserve your meat at home, you want to make some turkey jerky or whatever it's called, and you want to, or versus comparing it to how the industry would do it, you would start adding salt. You would start adding some of the similar preservatives that would be needed in order for that to be preserved over time. See, at the end of the day, you're using very, very similar techniques. This helps to not demonize the tools that are used in industrial agriculture, because you'll see that at the end of the day, they might not make as much of a difference as you think. So one thing that we already know from massive surveys that are conducted is that we are already consuming high percentages of canned, frozen, and dried food items. So especially for certain nutrients that we need to consume, for example, from vitamin E, you can see the green here is canned. We get a lot of our vitamin C from canned goods. We get a lot of our vitamin E from canned goods, so on and so forth, with sodium and potassium. So either you get them from one source or another. Sometimes gets talked about a lot, but at the end of the day, you are getting your needs already, well, at least many people, from canned goods. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. To the right, we can see a graph of the percentage of needs that would not be met if this added nutrients to canned goods and dry goods and frozen goods, if those were to not be there, we would have a huge gap in many nutrients for essentially our needs. So we can see the huge gap we would have for folate and for thiamine, and so on and so forth with other vitamins and minerals. But of course, at the end of the day, we want to know what should we do with this information? Should we not then eat fresh food? How should we incorporate this? So we want to think about a very easy way to conceptualize this would be a bullseye. Yes, of course, we many times want to use fresh food, and when we shop, we want to go for that option if that is available. But don't think that getting farther away from the bullseye is not going to get you any of your needs. You can compromise and try to hit the bullseye as much as possible and get fresh food. But the farther away you go, there's going to be more processed. So here you would have food that is processed to help preserve and enhance its nutrients and freshness. And then farther and farther away, you would get more and more processed food. But if you think about it, fresh food, although yes, it is minimally processed, is not necessarily the farthest away from ready-to-eat food. As you might have noticed, sometimes you buy products that when you look at their list of ingredients, it's really, really short, but they're ready-to-eat food. The price might be sometimes a little higher, so you will have to evaluate those things. But getting closer to the bullseye will not necessarily get you farther away from meeting your nutrient needs. It's more of a simplistic equation that might get you closer to your needs. So this is sort of an algorithm that you can use whenever thinking about this in the spectrum of less to more processed. And we want to definitely understand or just evaluate from the available evidence if we will always get, for a fact, more fresh, more vitamins from fresh as opposed to canned and frozen and what gets often taught as the more processed options. But a paper published in 2017 in the Journal of Food and Composition Analysis assured us that this is not the case. With vitamin C, beta-carotene, and folate, we can see that for green beans and for spinach, we get a significant difference, but not exactly in the direction that we would think. Sure, in spinach, fresh, which is the blue here, was the highest in terms of vitamin C. Oops, this spat through me, but I was talking about vitamin C. For spinach, sure, it's going to be the highest in fresh and goes down subsequently. But first of all, it's not like you get absolutely nothing with frozen. You still need at least some amount of vitamin C for your requirements. And what's most important, for almost all the categories, you have no significant differences in their content. So these bars here are not showing the error or the variability that you're going to see in the nutrients. But actually, when we say that there's no difference between this one and this one, it just means that if you were to put some bars here saying like this goes from here to here, this goes from here to here, it would actually not matter. They would overlap enough for us to say that there's no difference. And this holds for vitamin C, for beta carotene, for folate, and for other nutrients that were investigated in this publication. So it's important to keep in mind that no, you're not always going to get more nutrients based on more fresh food. And for example, here in the case of green beans, you can get more vitamin C if you were to buy the frozen option for whatever reason. I'm not a food scientist, so I don't know the exact reason why this was, but empirically, we can confidently say that we did find more vitamin C in the frozen green beans. And now I just want to talk a little bit about the spelling myths. This is a current one, I would say, talking about plant-based being always cheaper. To the left, I just want to orient you to some options for plant-based that you're going to find in, for example, Burger King or McDonald's or White Castle, and their meat-based counterparts. And we can clearly say that no, it's not always the cheapest option. Sometimes it's either the same, but most times it's slightly more expensive. And it's not exactly more nutritious, at least at the macro level. We can see that they have very similar calories, or they have sometimes slightly more. In terms of things that we might want to watch for example, sodium. Oh my God, this is speeding through me. Something like sodium, we might sometimes want to watch for. Sometimes the plant-based option is going to be slightly higher. So no, eating plant-based is not necessarily always better, not only for a budget, but also nutritionally. But I don't want to mistakenly say that then this is always the equation that you should use in order to evaluate if eating, for example, plant-based is good or bad for you. It's slightly better, slightly worse, depending on your goals. Because to be completely honest, plant-based options can be very beneficial to include in your diet. So if you were to spend a pound of black beans, a pound of brown rice, et cetera, you would get, for this list at least, a total cost of $5. And from this, you can get, chili, you can get some mashed potatoes with a black bean burger that has some sauteed celery and green onions with some lemon in it. So you can get many options from this $5. So no, it's a little bit more nuanced than just saying like, if you were to try and get plant-based options, is always going to be better or worse. And no, you cannot say that, at least monetarily speaking, it is always not the best case scenario. Sometimes it is the best case scenario to include just plant-based options depending on your needs and your preferences. So it's very nuanced, but I just wanted to express that this is really a myth that is always going to be the cheaper option or the best option, nutritionally speaking. It's not always the case, but it can be the case that is better. And regarding eating healthy being more expensive, I know that I asked this at the beginning, and I really wanted to just dispel this really quickly. I literally it doesn't matter where I search, what options I have for whatever needs I need to meet, there is an option. It doesn't matter where I look. I can look in the literature. I can look just a plain Google search. Obviously, I encourage everyone to be careful with how you evaluate that, but you will find an option for anything you need. If you have a really tight budget, just say like meals below $1, meals above $1. Let's say that your limitation is that you don't know how to navigate the grocery shop, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but it doesn't matter what limitations you currently have. There is a reliable source. For example, there is a dietitian, there is an MPH or an RD, both degrees, sorry, that has written about this, that you can go look for on the internet or somewhere else and look for that thing that you need and start from there. So it's just a myth that it's inevitably expensive and there is no other way. That's just untrue. And now going back to what do we do with this information? Basically, you need to plan. This is just a quote by Benjamin Franklin up here saying that if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Because this habitual thing that we do, here I'm just illustrating a book that is pretty popular from Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, talking about the cue, routine, reward that we inevitably engage in for almost everything. And this includes planning for budget-friendly meals. If we have this urge of planning for our next week's meal, we have the cue that, okay, it's time, So we engage in a routine of planning, either worse or better. for what our week is going to look like, then we can get our reward, which is going to be either partial or complete in terms of how satisfied we are with our goals. So what I want to say is that it often is the case that we accomplish our goals partially, haphazardly, and just basically suboptimally, because we get some meals done, we throw the rest away. We get some meals planned, but then we don't eat some of them, or they rot in the fridge because we just don't like the amount of variety that we plan for. So it is the case that many times this bad planning becomes habitual. So what we want to do, obviously, is to start replacing those poor planning, poor spending, unsuccessful cooking tools that we're using with their opposites. We obviously want to plan better, spend better, and use better cooking techniques so that we can fit our needs to our tools, or our tools to our needs, I should say. And based on that, obviously, results were ensued. But I want to talk about this concretely, so I just want to offer a case study. I don't know how this is going to sound to all of you, but this is anecdotally true. That you're going to have a busy family. Let's call them the busybodies, and there's two parents in this family. They're really busy with work, and there's two kids that are at school, and they have many extracurricular commitments. So they're really, really busy in general, and they have a really low budget to accomplish their nutritional goals. Their cooking time is limited. Their needs are at least obvious to their parents. They need food variety because they're going to get bored if they just eat the same thing the entire week, and they have to meet obviously their caloric and nutritional needs, not only of themselves but of their kids. So they really want 2 breakfast options, at least 2 lunch options, 2 for everything, basically, dinner, dessert, and per person, obviously. So what do? They plan for it. They use technology, as I was talking at the beginning, and they use their phone. They have their phones available, and they know that they have apps that have many recipes that they can connect to. And they know that this is connected, let's say, to their grocery planning app. Let's say that they use, Meijer or Walmart or whatever your local grocery might be. And they have 2 to 3 hours to cook maximum, let's say on a Saturday or Sunday. And they just basically don't have a lot of time. And they plan to use bulk cooking methods, which I'll talk about later. It just means that they are going to use methods that are going to yield a lot of result for a little bit of time. So what was the result? They picked up their groceries in 30 minutes. They decided to go for that option. They just put their things online and picked them up with their car. They cooked, chopped, baked, roasted, peeled, did all the things that we talked about before in order to better process their food and preserve it better for the week. And they spent about $150. I don't know how realistic this sounds to you, but this is a possible thing. They spent about $150 per meal per person, and they spent about $65 total for food. So I don't know how unrealistic this might sound to you, but we will go through specifically how you could accomplish this. So I don't want these to sound like magical thinking. You can do this. It's just a matter of having the right tools. Yeah, so I was just trying to say how. But obviously, just first, what is it that I was talking about? What is this bad habitual thing that gets incorporated into our budget-friendly planning that goes wrong? Well, one of the things that goes wrong a lot of time is that you eat out when you have food at home. Why that is? There are many, many reasons why that happens. You don't like the food you made. You didn't have enough variety in your food selection, etc. There are many options why this might be, but we know that in America, we eat out a lot. Another thing that happens a lot, that doesn't happen just with food, but you can see it with food very clearly, is that we shop impulsively. This happens because, for example, we are hungry and then we decide to look at the grocery store because we have to plan for our grocery list for next week. Or we go to the store itself and then we buy compulsively. We didn't have this item on our list, but we just felt that we had to reach for this candy or the unnecessary hummus. It can really range from what you pick up from the store, but people just do so compulsively. Another thing that happens very often is buying duplicates. I forgot what I had at home, or you're not having a plan for the grocery store or the kitchen. So you go to the grocery store, and again, this happens. You just start shopping compulsively for whatever it is that you wanted to buy that's not on your list, it's not on your budget, or in the kitchen itself, you just didn't plan for it. So now you're using this cooking technique that is yielding, it's going really slow. You didn't know it's going really slow. You didn't really plan for it really well. So it's not going as you expected, obviously. So how do we address this? So step one would be obviously determining what you need. So let's say that we divide this into planning phase and action phase. Let's say that for the planning phase, to make this very concrete, you have 30-45 minutes. You have a short cooking time. This is what you want. You want to spend a short amount of time cooking. It's not necessarily the case, and people might want to spend some more time cooking, and that might not be a problem. But let's say for the sake of time limitations, you might have a short amount of time to cook. Nutritionally, obviously, you want this to be nutrient dense, and it may or may not want may or may not want this to be calorie dense. So if you're one of those people that has a short lunch and you need to have some calories, a nutrient dense meal, and some carrots with hummus and a peanut butter sandwich does it, then that's the case. And obviously, we want to have variety in the flavor and the taste of our food, because boredom is a real thing in terms of food, and it can cause some trouble along the road. Obviously, as we're talking about budget-friendly meals, we want this to be low cost. So if we were to say, $150 to $250 per meal, like the Busy Buddies or whatever, and you wanted to spend a total of $35 total on groceries per week, let's say you're just one person in this case, that is a feasible thing. But this is the plan. You just need to put something down in terms of what you're going to do. So you have the time, nutrient-wise what you need, and cost what you need. So what are you going to do about that? Let's say that you need to put an actionable plan that also takes you some 30 to 45 minutes. This might seem long, but over the long haul, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble. This would include something like choosing a source for your needs, nutritionally and time-wise even. So using an app, a website, or a phone-based app like Tasty or Fitman Cook, which gives you not only variety, but a source of variety in terms of nutrient and calories, as well as cost. All these things are available for you to consider whenever you have these kinds of apps like Tasty or Fitman Cook. And you might want to definitely choose something for where to get the groceries from. Where are you going to get this budget-friendly meals? Let's say, as I mentioned before, like the Walmart app or the Meijer app. These are both options for you to plan. If not, obviously the classic grocery list is completely okay. And choosing, this just keeps skipping on me. Sorry about that. So as I mentioned before, the source for your needs doesn't need to be an app. It could just be you writing down a list of things that you absolutely need in terms of taste and nutrition and variety. You want, as I mentioned before, to savory meals, to sweet meals. So this could be done in very many different ways. But I want to incorporate technology because we're not cavemen anymore. We have a lot of resources in terms of technology. And I think it's really important that we incorporate it to make our lives easier. So determining, so getting what you need, obviously at home, as I mentioned before, you want to prepare yourself. You want to double check for those duplicates, which I talked about before. I'm definitely at fault for doing this many times. I go to the grocery store, I didn't double check for something, I buy it again. And there goes my, $2 on whatever it is that I need to buy. And preparing that list or preparing that pickup, if you were to use one of those apps and ask for the pickup, is really, really important to do in terms of a preparation phase. For the grocery store, if you chose the pickup, you want to go and pick up your groceries, or you want to prepare yourself for what it is going to be like to do some in-store grocery shopping. But I want to explore this a little bit more because this can get a little complicated. So if we were to pick up our groceries, one of the main reasons why I encourage this is because you have more time to consider what you need. This happens to me actually. A good example would be I try to just order my Jimmy John's in person, and for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the spur of the moment, I forget that I want no mayo. I forget that I want whole wheat, whatever. I just forget. So if I just had a little bit more time to do it, like the app of Jimmy John's, I would have more time to get it correct, which I do nowadays, and I do in fact get it correct more times than not. So I encourage people to do this more often because you really do have more time to consider what you're going to need. You have more time to double check. You might be at home and you can literally just open your pantry or whatever, and then you determine, yes, I do have this, I do not have this. And there's a lower likelihood of reaching for the hummus because the hummus is not there. So it's pretty clear cut. But if that's not an option, if you just don't prefer that, if you want to go in store, then you just have to be ready. This is not a perfect, oh my goodness, sorry. Anyways, that's what I was saying. This is not a perfect equation, but it is a pretty good one. The outer aisles where the fresh food, if that is an option for you to consider, first is where you want to go first, and then you might consider the center aisles. Again, this is not a perfect equation because there's nothing wrong with going through the center aisles first. As long as you have your list, as I mentioned down here, which is essential, you can go through the center aisles. Again, it's just a simplistic way of making your life perhaps a little easier. But yes, a list is essential because if you're going to go through the center aisles, you can get distracted with there's so many options when going through the center aisles, and you can just get distracted. So getting specific is another good thing for you to consider because as you're going through the center aisles, you might see just a ton of options. But if you know you want X, Y, or Z barbecue brand, just go in there, have your list, have the brand ideally that you need, or if you have it in your head already, you don't need to write it down, that's completely okay. Just have a plan and have a list. But I just want to insert a caveat here because when you go and use this equation, the deli section is going to be around the corner when you go through the outer aisles, and that's not always the best option. Again, it's not the worst option. It's not a bad option. You just have to be careful because the deli section might be really rich in things that you might want to watch for. So there's going to be really, really processed meats in that section, which have really high sodium content. So none of these are necessarily bad, but you might want to be watching for one of these things. So just be careful with that. And again, this is a caveat because you don't want to skip over the frozen section, which is also, it could be in the center aisles, depending on where you are. And lastly, if you were in my last talk, I talked about accountability, and I think this is incredibly important for grocery shopping as well. If you were just to say to someone else your plan, like you don't want to spend more money than whatever amount, or you want to make sure that to eat the most healthy, if you could go with someone that keeps you accountable, this truly maximizes and increases the likelihood of you to essentially get what you really need and not just get everything that you think you want while you are at the store. And in terms of preparation, you probably have heard this a million times about meal prepping. This is really important regarding using your time most efficiently whenever you do have to get to cooking. But once you're doing it, one thing to consider is to double or triple batch. So basically, you have your recipe that you found in Tasty or in whatever app or website or magazine. And what you want to do many times in order for you to have more than you need really is to double or triple batch it. That way you are planning to have variety not only this week with this meal that you're preparing as an option, but you want to have it available for the next 2 weeks. So you're gonna have this batch for this week in case you double batch it, and then you freeze the next batch, which is gonna be available for you, let's say in 2 to 3 weeks when you want it again, because let's say you already had it and you really like it. And you also might want to chop, peel, slice, roast, and do all these things that the ways in which you are gonna have to basically process your food in order for it to be available. Whatever you have to throw it in the pan. If you need a chopped, celery, then just chop it ahead of time, chop it in bulk so that it's available for you whenever you need it. If you're not gonna use it, you might wanna freeze it, you might wanna vacuum seal it, etc. But it's really good to do this in bulk as well. So these are two truly important components of meal prepping that I would suggest everyone to incorporate in their toolbox. And to the right, what we see is an illustration of what I truly think is one of the best algorithms you can use for variety and nutrition, which is a rotating menu. So you're gonna have the tofu scramble, shakshuka, the sesame peanut noodles, and you have this and one other option, and those are your core items for the week for your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And what you do is you have 2 to 3 rotating items that you would like to switch for every 2 to 3 weeks. So you see a different recipe here and there. And what you do is you just substitute that rotating item for whatever new recipe you found, and then you keep using the variety component of the equation to not only maximize, again, and increase the likelihood of you meeting your variety and flavor needs, but also your nutritional needs. And I'm wrapping up basically most of what I've said to this point. So I just want to offer some takeaways. for what it is that I suggest everyone to do when it comes to building a budget-friendly plan. Starting here to the left, again, planning and spending are part of the process, so you can't really get rid of this. The framing that you use to approach these problems is essential, because you will feel more or less at ease with how this process goes based on how you think about this problem. So no, you can't get rid of preparing or for planning, for shopping, for any of these things. You just have to know how to do them better. They're literally going to ride you all the way to your goal. You definitely want to determine what you need. You want to plan and prepare before going to the store. And while you're at the store, then when you're getting what you need, you want to double check what you have at home. You want to know what to expect when grocery shopping. And when preparing what you need, you want to maximize the time that you have allotted for meal prepping. So again, double and triple batching is a great tool, and making sure to switch things up, which a tool such as a rotating menu is a great idea, again, for maximizing the likelihood of meeting your nutritional needs, your variety needs, your flavor needs, all of those needs that you have regarding food. And with that said, I just want to offer some resources for everyone regarding how to maximize or how to best how to store your food. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has some great resources, so I would suggest everyone to visit their website regarding their storing food, regarding eating affordably. There are many articles that are well written. This is one that I really enjoyed reading. It's from Esther Ellis. She's an MS RDN, LDN, and here's the link for that. And I wanted to offer as well, in summary here, some of the apps that will make your life a lot simpler. These are some meal planners, and they help you to basically, obviously, as the name suggests, plan for meals. They have like automatic generators of meals depending on your needs. So you put in that you have this, for example, you are a vegetarian, or you eat whatever this diet is, or you have no particular diet, but you would like to emphasize this component. There are many apps that can help you to meet your goals, and these are some of them. Regarding the grocery shopping apps, almost every grocery store that I know of nowadays has an app. If not, most of them do. This is not the end all be all. You don't need an app in order to grocery shop properly, but they help a lot. And many times if they don't have an app, they have a website. So I would suggest checking whatever your local grocery shop is. For me, I guess, and for many of my friends, is Walmart, Meijer, and Target. So choose whichever fits best your needs. In terms of variety, I mentioned this two before. This is my two favorite, but there are many out there. If you literally just type recipe variety apps, or I don't know, any alternative of this, you will get options like Tasty or Fitman Cook. And obviously there are apps even for integrating habits themselves, and for that one I would offer Noom. There are other options regarding getting food from different sources in case that you're a student, for example, and you would like for some resources, some place to go in order to get some food that is already available. They are dispensing them to, for example, students. I know that the Sustainable Student Farm is an option, the pantry. Bevere has some options as well here at University of Illinois. So you might want to contact them if that is something that you're interested in. And with that said, I wanted to encourage everyone to take the survey. Here you just have to scan this QR code. We would really appreciate the feedback here because it helps the speakers, myself included, to develop our skills. And also it gives us a way to see what you guys want to hear for future seminars. So there's that. And with that, I just wanted to encourage everyone to attend our next week talk. Is gonna be about nutrition labels. It's called Get the Facts on Nutrition Labels, Know Your Labels. It is gonna be conducted by Layla Shin. She has a master's, she's an RDN, and this is gonna be about learning about how to read nutrition facts, labels, as well as important information on vitamins and supplements that you can use in making healthy diet choices for you and for your family. And with that said, that is it. So
great, Jonathan. I think there was a question earlier that I want to make sure that you do answer. It looked like it was from Steph, and she asked about, let me make sure. What is fresh? What is fresh stored? I think she just wanted to kind of define what is fresh stored.
Sure thing. Yeah, so I should have clarified that earlier, but fresh stored in that article specifically, they were talking about food that is stored in the fridge for 5 or more days. A lot of the literature has focused on what happens to food, not necessarily when it's frozen immediately, but when you just let it sit on your fridge. And if I'm gonna actually go back really quick so I can make this visually more understandable here. So as you can see, people wanted to, so many people have hypothesized that the quality and the quantity of nutrients in food does go down when you just store them in your fridge for, say, 5 days. So there's a lapse in time between you buying them and you cooking them. And they wanted to see if 5 days would significantly decrease the nutrient content of certain important nutrients such as vitamin C, beta-carotene, folate, among others. And they noticed a trend, a downward trend, not only with these 3 nutrients, but with other minerals, that there was significantly less nutrients for very specific nutrients such as vitamin C on specific food items, such as spinach. And there was a downward trend, as you can see. So it's lower here, slightly lower here, slightly lower here, slightly lower here. But there wasn't any significant difference. And once again, if you were to let your food sit for 5 days, as you can see, it's not like, no, well, now you don't get any nutrients. It's just like their nutrient content might decrease a bit, but it's not like they just like their nutrient content disappears. So it's not the end of the world if you were to store them for 5 days. It's just something that you might want to consider. You might want to cook them closer to when you buy them than not. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think there's also another question about how do you feel about MyFitnessPal app? I don't know if you're familiar with MyFitnessPal, but
yeah, I am. I didn't mention too many apps about tracking, for example, outcomes related to eating healthier, such as apps like MyFitnessPal, or I think it's My Macros, and there are many. There are a lot of apps, and I do like MyFitnessPal quite a bit. I know that it makes your life a lot easier with something like a few tools that they have in that app, such as scanning barcodes and other things, such as that one. So I do like it a lot, and they do, from what I understand, they are incorporating this thing that says verified, and I'm unsure of what that means exactly, because, for example, if I were to know that MyFitnessPal is putting that verified seal whenever an item, the content of an item in terms of its macronutrient and micronutrient content matches the USDA food database, then I would say that is very reliable, but I'm unsure what that means exactly. So I do like it a lot. I think it's pretty good. And one of the main things that it might help people with is consistency and accountability. So I do encourage people to use it, if that is something that they feel that they need in terms of a tool.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any other questions? We can possibly unmute, but if you have a question that you'd like to ask in the chat, please feel free.
I'm seeing that also Linda said whole foods or plant-based contribute to a healthy way to maintain weight. Both can contribute to a healthy way to maintain weight. Yep. I'm not sure if that was a question, but yes, they can both contribute to maintaining a healthy weight.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I just want to thank everyone for their time today, and thank you for coming. Thank you for participating, and we hope to see you next week on our topic about Get the Facts on Nutrition, Know Your Labels. So all of you are free to go. Hopefully you were able to learn something new today, and thank you, Jonathan, for your expertise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into CUWise TV. We hope you enjoyed the show. This video can be accessed anytime on youtube.com. In the YouTube search bar, type in UPTV6 and look for their microphone logo. We hope you will join us again next week for more local, engaging content designed specifically for Champaign County older adults. Take care and stay safe.